All right, guys, we're back. Another Modified Rides podcast. Today I have someone that I've worked kind of beside and with for several years now. Has been in the automotive uh, magazine world, I guess you'd say, for a long time. Today I have Scott Parker. What's going on, Scott?
How's it going?
So you've been in the industry for quite a while already, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Over 20 years at this point.
So
And
did you know as a kid that you were going to play with cars and trucks your whole life?
well, I sure hoped I was. I grew up being really into cars. Didn't really have a good outlet. I had an uncle that built and restored Model Ts, but my dad would take me to car shows and stuff, but we didn't have any projects. We weren't doing a lot other than, like I said, kind of going to car shows and stuff. Um, and I got hooked on it. I used to watch Dukes of Hazzard. I used to watch Knight Rider, The Fall Guy. Sometimes I'd pretend to be sick and stay home from school and just watch reruns. So I got really hooked on that, and I was like, "Oh man, I want to be a stunt driver when I grow up." And then I got a little older, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know if I want to hurt myself on the daily like that." So I got into reading a lot of car magazines, and I was like, "Man, that would be really great to have that type of a job where you're just talking about cars, writing about cars, testing cars, and that seems like a really great
What
gig.
what car magazines first got you hooked?
Car and Driver, Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forward, um, Road and Track, and Hot Rod to some extent.
So you were more geared towards the car review type stuff from the beginning more than the crazy custom stuff.
Initially, yes, and then I got more into like I started out as a Mustang guy. I had a '99 GT New Edge, so that really I got really into that. And then how do I modify that to go faster? More that kind of the performance side, I would say, than like the custom side.
Gotcha. I know. I think I was probably one of the few of my friends group that didn't own a Mustang when I was younger. Like I think
Yeah,
everybody in town had one at some point growing
yeah,
up.
they were very popular. I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that. I thought the same thing. I was like, man, is this like a New Jersey thing or what?
Is that where you grew up? Was in New Jersey?
Yep, I grew up in southern New Jersey, about 10 minutes from Atco Raceway.
So how was the car scene when you were a kid in New Jersey? Was it thriving or was it just kind of like now? I don't think the Northeast has a huge car culture.
Yeah, not as much now, I don't think. I mean, I've been removed from it. I mean, I moved out of New Jersey a long time ago. Um, it definitely doesn't seem like what it was when we were there. A lot of Mustangs, a lot of late model GM stuff. And then keep in mind too, that area, like New Jersey's a physically small state. You could
Yeah.
drive through it in like 2, 3 hours. So when you live there, it's very common to drive over to Philly, up to New York. I mean, you could be up in Boston in less than a day. So very common for people to travel all the way up and down, the Northeast in that area. So let's say you were at an event in New Jersey, you could see people from Connecticut, Massachusetts, whatever, at the event. So we is really that whole area that it was thriving when I was there. But Englishtown closed, Atco closed. I think there's one drag strip left in the state of New Jersey, and there's not a lot of other venues besides New Jersey Motorsports Park. So
Well, thinking of cars in New Jersey, what's the deal with the gas up there? I know you can't pump your own gas. Is that still a thing? I guess has it always been like that?
yeah, yeah. As far as I know, at least my entire lifetime, it's been that way, and it definitely catches people off guard. Catches me off guard. Like I said, I moved out of there a long time ago. So every once in a while, I go back and I go to get out of the car. And I'm like, oh, nope, I'll just sit here and wait.
I bought
So
a
yeah,
truck in Boston and drove it back home and had to stop and get gas down there. I'm like, this is the weirdest thing. You can't pump your own gas. I guess it's a law.
Yeah, they do it to stimulate jobs, so it gives at least one more person a job, I guess, at each place.
So when did you move out of New Jersey?
I moved out of New Jersey around 2000. Oh, what year was that? 2009, around there.
So not too terribly long ago.
No, it feels like forever ago. I spent I think I spent 8 years in Florida, and then I spent another 8 years in California before I moved out here to Charlotte.
So you said if you were into the Mustang world, I guess that's what got you linked into the industry is playing with the Mustangs.
But
Like
yeah,
did that
absolutely.
open any doors for you when it come to job wise in the industry?
Yeah, so I had been reading Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards, which coincidentally was based out of New Jersey, out of the northern part of the state, and I
I
had
didn't know
noticed
that.
that. Yeah, and I had noticed that, so I found the email to the editor, Jim Camposano, and I just started hitting him up. I'm like, hey, I'm in school. Like, do you guys do internships? And then no, we don't do that, whatever. 3 months, 6 months would go by. I'd hit them up again. Hey, I'm out of school. Do you guys have any openings? Um, didn't have any openings. And then, and then I'm out there working. And at the time, I think I was working 3, 4 jobs, trying to make the writing thing work. And just out of the blue, I got an email just like, hey, I have a job, opening. It's not on Muscle Mustangs, but it's on our late model GM magazine. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm into all sorts of cars. I started with a Mustang. That's what I got started on. But my grandfather used to sell, used to have a Buick dealership. He used to sell Buicks. I grew up around all sorts of stuff. So uh, you know, A bodies are probably one of my favorites. So I love all cars. So it was not a tough sell for me. And thankfully it worked out. That magazine was GM High Tech Performance, as you well know. So I started there as an associate editor, and then kind of worked my way up to run the magazine.
Now you said that you were trying to get things going with your writing. Did you go to school or something for writing?
Yeah, I went to school for journalism. I went to Rutgers University, and because I mentioned before, I grew up. I had known when I was in high school that I really wanted to get into magazine writing. So I went to school, and I had looked at a couple of schools to do journalism, and for some reason I chose Rutgers. I guess because it was close to home. But it worked out. So I went to school, got my journalism degree, and then out, I was shot out into the real world, and I quickly learned how difficult it was to make a living in this field. Most of my fellow graduates were doing other things, not journalism. So, a lot of people went into like PR or just other random jobs. So, it's a tough business to crack into and to do full time.
So what year did you start doing the magazine thing?
2000, I graduated in 2003, and then in 2004 is when I started at GM High Tech.
Now Jim's been around for a while. He's been in a few different magazines, hadn't he? I remember that name floating around.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Jim's been around for a hot minute. He worked all the way back in those like CSK days and all that stuff. McMullen Argus. So Jim was at Muscle Mustangs for a very long time, and then from there he went to Super Chevy. I worked with him on Super Chevy when I was running, all the websites for what was Source Interlink at that time. So and then he went from Super Chevy to he did that for quite a while, and then he went to Pro Media, and then was working with Pro Media and the guys at the NMRA and NMCA for a while. And now he works with me again. Actually, he works on Street Muscle magazine.
Gotcha. So your first job, like you said, was a associate editor.
Hmm.
Was it anything you thought it would be when you first stepped into it?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it was very much like what I thought it would be when I first came into it. And I say that only because I had done an internship and had done a lot of the less glamorous things. In fact, I had done almost nothing but the less glamorous things as an internship. You're just copy editing and going through, all sorts of quality checks on the magazine. So I had done all of
Yeah.
that stuff prior. So going into that, I had only had a small taste of like, this is like the fun stuff. Most of what I did was not that fun. Um, but when I went to GM High Tech, I was like, oh, this is cool. There's fun stuff. We're going to the track. We're building cars. And then the other times I'm writing, and I was able to just kind of scroll myself away and spend a lot of time learning. One of the things that like really stimulates me is learning. I love learning, and the position, I loved it because I was able to talk to people a lot and ask them a lot of questions. And the more questions I asked, the more I learned. And that to me was like very, very fulfilling. And every article that I did was another opportunity to learn. So I really, really enjoyed that about the position.
Now, when you started with that magazine, who was running it?
I'm sorry, Rick Jensen was.
Okay. And how long were you at GM High Tech?
I was at GM High Tech for 8 years. The last 2 years that I was at Source Interlink, I had moved over to the digital side.
Because didn't you go over to Corvette or something after that?
Uh, that was actually later. So I worked for Source Interlink for 10 years, and they kind of went through their financial struggles. And then when they did their whole restructuring and everything under Enthusiast Network, I did Vet Magazine for a year. Yeah. So that was kind of my temporary return.
Now, I know I've brought it up with multiple people on different episodes and stuff. I'd never know I'd get a check in the mail and I'd be like, well, who is this? I don't know who this company is, where they would change from Source Interlink to Prime Media to 10 to like, you never knew where it was coming from. So, uh, you were there when I guess they did the first big batch of cuts, or were you there for the first and second?
I was there. It's hard to say. There were a lot of those. So I
I know the
definitely
first
was.
one, I know mini trucking was one of the first ones that got hit that I dealt with a lot.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple others in that batch. And then I know later that's when Lowrider and Trucking and Super Street and I think the Mustang magazine and everything had went away. Were you still there at that time?
No, that was probably right around the time that I had like came back as to do vet. When I was there originally, I was there until they closed the Florida office. I had been working out of that Florida office, and then they had closed, I want to say 50% of the magazines at that time, when they closed that office. So that was when I left.
Because that Rick was down there at that office with you, correct?
No. Rick never actually. Funny enough, so Rick, my old boss, he never worked out of that office. Right when they
No,
told us they were.
seats.
Oh, yes, he worked there towards the end. Poor guy. They moved him from California to Florida, and then he had been there for like, I don't know, 6 months maybe, and then they were like, oh hey, thanks for moving out. By the way, we're closing the office and the magazine. So
Did you see the closing coming, being in the industry like that, or were you blindsided by it?
yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, because I was one of the second round or whatever round it was. Yeah, it wasn't a huge surprise. I mean, just for context, I was I I worked in the New Jersey office, which is a very small office. There was probably 6, 7 of us there. And then they decided, first they had said, okay, we're getting rid of this office. Our office was in Bergen County. which is if you ever watch like Real Housewives of New Jersey, that's where that takes place. It's a very expensive area. It's very close to New York. That's where our office was. It was a small office, but very, very nice office, nice area. Extremely expensive to have a tiny little office. And so, no surprise, they wanted to move us out of that office. And they supposedly had a warehouse in Carteret. And they made big promises. We're going to build you a shop here. We'll put you inside this warehouse, where we have this warehouse already. We're like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. And for me, I wasn't from that area. It wasn't gonna. I would move wherever. It didn't affect my commute. So I thought it sounded cool. Then like a month or two later, they said, oh, okay, yeah, we're not going to do that. We want to move you guys all to Florida. We have this big Florida office. We want to move you guys all down there. So they moved us to Florida, and then we had been there for a month, and they declared bankruptcy. So that was like my okay, things are I thought we were stepping up, but really this was all like cost savings stuff. And then obviously when you find out your company's going into bankruptcy, you get an idea things aren't going so great. So
you've moved, bought a house, and
yeah. Well, thankfully I didn't own anything. I didn't own a house, but I had moved, which I was very nervous about moving. I lived in New Jersey all of my life, all of my 28 years at that point, and moved to Florida. And I was very nervous about moving to Florida because there just aren't a lot of those type of jobs if you move to Florida. And they're like, oh, everything's good. Everything's good. Everything was not good.
Well, don't most of the people that live in New Jersey spend half the time in Florida anyway? So you probably felt at home.
Well, it depends. In Tampa, you actually get a lot of Ohio, Michigan people. It's the east coast of Florida where all the New Jersey, New York people go. So
we get all the, North Carolina gets all the halfbacks where they move halfway back home. So
absolutely, that's the move. You're like, oh, Florida's too hot. Yep, this is good. We're good here.
So when you worked down in Florida, what all magazines were in your office for that short stint? Because there were several based out of Florida, wasn't there? Like the Performance Group called?
Yeah, we had about a dozen magazines. So Super Chevy, Muscle Mustangs, GM High Tech, Circle Track was based out of there. The Mopar was based out of there. We had quite a few magazines. 5.0 was based out. So all the Mustang magazines were based out of there. So I think it was about 12 total.
So were you, if you say you were there at Vet at that time, mm-hmm. I guess when they let everybody go, did you have any idea where you were going at the time, or did you have to scrounge to figure out where you was going?
Well, it really worked out quite perfectly for me. I had moved over. So when they closed that office, I was on the digital side. I wasn't at Vet yet. So I had moved over to the digital side. I had saw the whole print thing coming from a mile away. I mean, I think we all did, right? So I had moved over to the digital side. I knew that I needed to kind of prepare for the next step in my career. There are a lot of great people doing the print side. If you look at like Jim as an example and Super Chevy, Jim's like a walking history book on like any muscle car really, but Chevys, like that wasn't really my niche. So where was I going to go with my career? I kind of realized that like, I don't really want to do that. So I have to find what my next step was. So I went back to business school. So I had been going to business school at night while I was, after I transitioned to the digital side. So I was doing business school. And then, so when they did the layoff, I was like, okay, great. Now I can focus more on getting school done quicker because I was only able to do 1-2 classes at a time. So I was able to focus on getting school done quicker. And then also I had all this freelance business from Source Interlink, from them shutting down. They had a lot of content needs. And then I had other clients that I acquired. So I just kind of started my own business. I wrote a book in that time with CarTech. So I did a lot of stuff that, I would say I probably did better as a result of, that. So it worked out
what
quite
was the
perfectly
book
for me.
What was the book?
Let's see if I have it. Oh, wrong one. Right here. So it's a guide
Okay.
on the Camaro, the fifth gen Camaro. So how to modify it. Um, so yeah, I had basically been there when I was at GM High Tech. I was there when they launched the thing. So we were one of the one of my friends, Greg Lavelle, who was local to us in Florida. He had a very early 2010 model. So and then we found another gentleman that was in Orlando, Terry, I believe it was his name, who had an automatic car. So we had these two cars that we were literally modified. They were early production cars. We got them and raced them even before the press cars. We were able to get press cars. So we were racing them. And I think we had drag radials and converter, nitrous. We had all this stuff even, before we even got a press car. So I really was there at an optimum time at GM High Tech where, for lack of a better term, we practically wrote the book on how to modify these things with the timing that I was there. So it only made sense to turn it into a book. So,
Now that book you can find at Barnes and Noble and everywhere.
yep, absolutely. And I believe Cartech is selling online now too on Amazon.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've had a couple guests on that's written some automotive books, so it's cool to see people. I guess it's not that far of a transition going from writing stuff for magazines versus a book, and if you had the journalist background, probably made it pretty easy.
Yeah, the hardest part is just, you've got to create you have to own the right, own the rights to the photos, which in some cases is a little challenging if you sold something to somebody else. So being careful about all of that, the copyrights, you can't just like take work that you did for somebody else and just grab it and use it over here because that's a copyright infringement. So yeah, that was probably the hardest part.
So, what what year? I'm trying to think. That was 14, I guess, when all the magazine stuff shut down.
Yeah, around there.
So I know as a freelancer, it's kind of a big blow to me because there were several of those magazines that I shot for had stuff, on file, in queue ready to go that just got lost. A lot of the truck stuff, but I mean, there's a couple GM High Tech covers hanging here behind me. So, uh, I know it was a big blow for me to see when that happened, but being on the inside, you said you kind of seen the writings on the wall and knew that that was coming. I mean, do you agree that it's the internet that's killed the print side of the magazines?
To some extent, I think so. I think it's probably a little more nuanced than that. It's not just that they killed print, they killed the model that the print companies were operating off of. I don't think, I mean, these are like very old companies. I mean, even just the way that they were run, they didn't really pivot or change their model or do anything substantial within any with any sort of time frame necessary to be a healthy business.
I know there was a lot of pushback on the digital side from, oh, I guess a lot of the uppers at several of the magazines. I know I've had a lot of the past truck editors on. Same thing, like, hey, let's push this, let's push that, and they're like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're here to do print, and we're not worried about everything else. And I guess the print side just missed the mark on that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of these things where it's very easy for us to sit here and go, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. When you were in it, it was impossible to know what the right move was. Hindsight's 2020, right? But at the time, it was like when you were in it, there's no playbook for this. We're all just taking our best guess of what we think is going on and what the best move is. Um, but yeah, in hindsight, I would say that, you know, the print stuff was, the cost kept going up for, transporting and getting the magazines there. And the readers didn't seem like they were going to pay that cost. So it has to go somewhere. And the revenue on the ad side wasn't going up. If anything, it was going down. So, that's not a good recipe for your business.
Well, I know if you try to hand somebody in high school right now a magazine, they almost look at you like, what is this? What am I supposed to do with this? Like, I can't zoom in, I can't scroll through it. And it's like, I guess it's everything progresses with technology and all that. So I guess it's almost a dying art, but I'm one of those, I guess, old school guys. Every time I go to a Walmart or a grocery store or anything, even, a Walgreens, I'll walk by the magazine aisle just to see what's there. And, I used to go spend hours when we had Books A Million here. They had the whole back two walls of the store wrapped in magazines. And now, well, first off, Books A Million's gone, but you go in Barnes and Noble and magazines are a super small section now. Like, I still gravitate towards the automotive section, even if, there's nothing that catches my eye. I'll still spend 10 minutes reading through all the covers just to see what's still out and what's still printed.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do the same. I used to spend hours there. Like, oh, why buy all these magazines? I'm just gonna just give a little sneak peek here. And I used to do that all the time. But it's definitely a changed world at this point.
I used to get a lot of, editors' contact infos. I'd see something like, a GM High Tech, while I was buying one of the truck magazines I was in. It's like, all right, well, who's the editor? Who do I need to get a hold of? I've got this car that's local. How can I shoot to expand my portfolio? So that was where I did my research. It wasn't online. There wasn't Google. There wasn't, you spent hours in the bookstore chasing down contact info with a pen and a pad.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a man. This is really dating myself. Um, Not specific to the automotive arena, but like magazines. There was a directory about this thick of like different magazines, and it was basically just built for freelancers for you to just go in and it would have the contact info of the editor, their typical pay rate, all how they would accept submissions. It would have all of that type of stuff on there.
I would have loved to have had a hold of one of those back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't, like I said, I don't think they had I don't think they had any automotive stuff in there because I remember looking through it. But yeah, it's basically like a phone book for magazine for freelancers looking to work with magazines.
I think a lot of my growth from title to title, freelancing was, I'd become friends with this editor and he's like, hey, I got, this guy who's, this other magazine, they're looking for something, can you hit him up? Like, it was a lot of word of mouth and referral type stuff to pick up new magazines.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why, I mean, and you touched on something that, I think is really near and dear to my heart, which is just reputation, right? Like your reputation is really important. Um, it's it's the thing that helps that word of mouth, right? If somebody works with you, if somebody works with Brandon, you know, they're bound to say it's something. Somebody's bound to ask, like, "Hey, Brandon just hit me up. Brandon. He said he worked with you. How is Brandon?" That reputation really means a lot. It means a lot as a freelancer. That's I would say that's probably 60% of how you get new business, maybe more. Because if you're just cold calling people, yeah, maybe they'll take a chance on you, but often a lot of times not. But if you have a good referral from somebody because of your reputation, then sure.
I've always tried to, step up when somebody's like, hey, we prefer this look over that look. Like when I'd shoot for, say, Dub Magazine, for example, I couldn't shoot for, a trucking or a street trucks or, GM High Tech. The look was completely different than what Dub Magazine or Lifted Level would have. So it's like I would always try to adapt to meet what that editor needed. So they'd be like, all right, well, this submission works out good. I can use them again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that. I never really had, because I was never in your position. I usually shot a lot of the same stuff, but I think was it SEMA or something. I was trying to shoot a couple, just even like trade show pictures, not even like a full feature like you do. And I really got to appreciate. I was like, oh man, this is way different. Shooting like a lifted F350 is way different than shooting like a muscle car. like a lowered
Yeah.
muscle car or something. It's just like, okay, first of all, I'm standing way too close. Let's back up. I don't even know what lens I'm supposed to be using. So yeah, you really do have to adapt to what you're shooting. And I see that with some of the stuff you did on Diesel Army. It's like I was like thinking to myself, like, why does he shoot all of this stuff out like in these like open areas? And then I thought about it. I was like, this is a giant truck. Like, it's a lot of surface area for reflection. So if you tried to shoot it someplace tighter, it's going to reflect everything. And it takes up so much area that like you're too close to things. It's just you really have to adapt your mentality, like you said, and your angles. I mean, you might even shoot with different equipment. I mean, I was shooting a fourth gen Camaro at LS Fest, Texas over the weekend. And, I was like literally on the ground, but you probably, taking a couple of low angle shots, but you probably wouldn't even do that if you were shooting like a lifted truck.
Well, I always say like motorcycles are the easiest things to shoot because they're so small. You don't have to worry about a lot of reflections. But yeah, like your point, these trucks, if you got a 30 by 16-inch wheel that's all polished, it's going to pick up as much reflection as that door is going to pick up.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a lot of different. You got to pay attention to what is around. Like I was shooting some stuff for a local company yesterday for Bring a Trailer, and like I was in their showroom. And it's like, all right, well, I have this to avoid because this is going to reflect here. And it's like, then they put me in a black floor, black wall with strobes. And I'm like, all right, yep, this is easy because there's nothing, I'm not pulling any reflections off anything because everything's black. So now, now, when did you get to where you're at now? Like, what led you to uh, the company you're at now? And tell
Uh,
everybody where you're at.
sure. So I'm at Power Automotive Media. I started there 8 years ago, and I had like as you had mentioned, I had gone off and done was doing my own thing. I did vet for a year, like on contract. That had kind of run its course. I was finishing up business school, and with the intention, it's like when you take my background plus the business degree, what really made the most sense is for me to be have kind of like a management position in automotive media. And this position just kind of came up. I don't even remember where I saw it. Just kind of came into my feed somehow, and I was like, oh wow, it really spoke to me. Spoke to all of my background and my experience and the things that I was passionate about and that I loved. And I was like, oh, this is really perfect. That I had never really, but it was in California, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to move to California, but the position looks great. So I'll just apply and we'll see what happens. And I did apply, and I heard from James Lawrence, and we talked quite a bit on the phone. I'll never forget because I was actually on vacation. I was in Seattle, and I was walking through like Pike's Place Market, and he called me, and I was like, oh, okay, I got to take this. So, and that's where I had a nice long talk with him, and I was like, okay, this is starting to sound like something. Um, so they flew me out there, and I checked out the area. Brought my wife with me. She really liked the area too, and you know, the rest was history. We locked in a position there, and my wife and I had my oldest daughter was quite young at that time, and so just the three of us and our dog. So really, the four of us moved out there, and we were there up until last year. We were there. So it was
So,
a
what
great.
did they hire you on there for? What was your title there when you first
Uh,
started?
I was director of content and strategy.
Okay, is that still your title now?
No, so I went through a couple of phases at Power. At that time, it's called Power Auto Media. We've kind of rebranded this year, but I started as director of content and strategy. It was myself and one other gentleman that ran kind of the operations side, that we ran the department. Um, and right around that time is when we had kind of acquired Acceleration Media, so we had even more brands, and we really grew the department. I ran that for a while, and then at some point I became vice president, And then after a while, James had decided he wanted to go off and start another business. And I had became an owner of the business. Had purchased some equity from him as well as some of the other employees. And then I was running the business with Lloyd Hunt. The two of us were running the business after James had left. So I was a general manager there for a little while, and then James actually just came back last year, and then at that point I've kind of moved back to my more like my previous role.
Now, this is strictly digital, correct?
Yeah, we've always been strictly digital. When we acquired Acceleration Media, they were print and digital, and we tried to give that a go for a short while, but we quickly found out that that was not going to be our mode. It was like, imagine being a digital company, and Power Auto Media was founded as a digital company, basically fighting against my former employee that only did print for the most part. All they did was talk about how great digital was, and now all of a sudden they're trying to sell print, and then they're like, "But you told us print's dead." So it was a bad sales pitch, and then on top of that, we had done such a good job of selling people on the idea that digital was the way, that they were starting to pull our spend away from print. So now it was like, well, we're reducing our spend in print. So no, so we quickly pivoted away from that. Digital is what we know, it's what we're good at. And we looked at it as this is the future. And now it's the present. So
Yeah. So, how is the format there different than when you were at, say, Source Interlink when it was all print and no digital?
sure. So at Source Interlink, our strategy changed a bit, but our idea originally, the plan was, they just took all of their print content and they uploaded that to the website. And then at some point they said, we're going to match that with some short form news content that we're going to put online only. So that was their strategy for a long time, whereas we were just coming straight to digital with both of those things. So it was quite a bit different in that regard in terms of the speed in which we were able to operate with a long form story, for example. You know, our strategy towards the end, our news was at Source Interlink was pretty quick. I mean, I had myself and two other people doing nothing but writing news for 10 magazines, and that was about our ratio, right? We had 2-3 people that did nothing but write news, so we were able to be pretty quick in churning it out. But the long form stuff, it's like, if you had, let's say you were one of the first people to test a new car, you know it wouldn't hit the web for 3 months, but we were able to just go live with that right away. So the speed on the long form stuff was probably the biggest difference between the two.
So, what all does the company do? I know you have Diesel Army, you have several other entities under that one umbrella, correct?
Yeah, we have 8 total brands: Diesel Army, Off Road Extreme, Chevy Hardcore, Street Muscle, LSX, Dragzine, Engine Labs. So we've got 8 total. Ford Muscle I left out, but we've got 8 total, and then we've also got an events division, and we have Horsepower Wars, which is kind of an extension of the other brands. But Horsepower Wars was it's really a video driven series. And at one point we were on TV for a little while with it, and we were producing full length television shows for it. But
Now,
we've kind of returned that to web only.
So I guess you would say it's a digital magazine company, because you kind of put the same content out that print magazines would, correct?
Yeah, we're a digital media company for sure. at least at least my division is right. Like our events division continues to grow, so that'll continue to be a larger part of our business and merchandise, selling merchandise, related to the events and the different brands.
Now, with it being strictly digital like that, I guess do you still have the same type of advertisers that the print industry does?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Really, the only difference is that all of our advertisers are completely endemic. We don't have any, like we don't work with like Build a Bear or anyone like that, or Vermont Teddy Bear or whatever. We don't do anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just not really our thing. Um, a lot of the value that we provide is through, having editorial content on those companies in addition to the ads. I think that combination is what really um, is what really it drives the most value, I think, for the companies. At the same rate, it's the single most challenging thing I think that we do. If our goal was only to create great content, that would be challenging enough. But we also have to provide some value to the companies that advertise with us too.
Now, with it being just digital and you're not counting, subscriptions and, newsstand sales, where does the growth and revenue come from with a strictly digital automotive company like that?
The revenue comes from advertising packages. We offer a variety of packages, for display ads, and then for some other products like like a newsletter. We have an email newsletter. We have a free, email newsletter, but we have some that are exclusive
Yeah.
sponsor newsletters too. Um, and then we have do some like site takeovers and a few other products related, to driving visibility to your brand. So that's where the revenue comes from. In terms of the growth, it's through web traffic. We meticulously, monitor all of our web traffic, on all of our pages. We're also doing a much better job of monitoring our social media analytics. We've invested very heavily in that in the last, I'd say in the last, 3 years.
What would you say is the number one growing brand under that umbrella now? Like which one's taking off more than the others?
Ooh, it depends when you ask. It depends. Everything fluctuates so much, right? So it's kind of hard to pinpoint. Over the last 3 months, I would say, Steve Turner is doing an amazing job on Ford Muscle. We've had a lot of growth there since Steve has come back. He had left. He had gone to work for Pro Media and the NMRA for a little while, and then he came back. And Steve's just an absolute legend, and he's a beast. If you've ever met Steve, he's just a content machine. So Steve's doing a great job. Ford Muscle has really been doing very well. And I think Engine Labs and Dragzine are poised to take off. We kind of haven't quite hit that pinnacle yet, but I think they're poised to do some really great stuff here in the next 6 months.
Now, I noticed one thing you didn't mention is you didn't have any kind of EV titles under any of yours. I guess everybody there's diehard gearheads like we are, and not trying to see what the future is going to hold. Like, what's your view on that?
Well, we dabble a little with EVs. We do have an EV brand, Electrified. We don't do a lot with it. It's something that we're kind of waiting. We're waiting to see what happens a bit with this market. In the previous administration, everything was full bore EVs. Now we've kind of taken some steps backwards. So we're just
I
kind
saw
of waiting to
Mopars
see.
pulled the plug.
Yeah. So we're waiting.
Chrysler,
Yeah,
Dodge,
exactly.
whatever company you want to call them now, they've pulled the plug on their new deal and brought the Hemi back. So,
Yeah. 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 I mean,
well,
as far as power is concerned, I mean, we're gearheads. I mean, we if somebody's going fast in something, we're interested in it. I think we're more interested in, the enthusiast space than like the general space, if you know what I mean. Like our niche is not what Car and Driver or Consumer Reports is doing. Our niche is more like, hey, what is your average guy doing in his garage? Um,
Yeah.
so if there aren't enough people, enough enthusiasts owning EVs, that's going to kind of dictate, what we do, quite
I've
frankly.
I've always said until you can pull up to a gas station, charging station, whatever it's called at the time, plug in, walk in, go to the bathroom, grab a drink, bag of chips, come back out, unplug it, and leave. I think until it gets to that stage, it's not going to do any of us any good, because I don't want to sit in some random parking lot for an hour, killing a time on my trip and adding to it. But like my wife's, we're trying to find her some kind of hybrid for the job she's got, and it's like if there was chargers at everywhere she had to go to, she could plug it in and be fine. But I think that infrastructure is going to keep that on the back burner for a lot of us, because you can't just go out and tinker on one of those like you can a Mustang or a truck or a motorcycle or something. It's a completely different world.
Yeah, yeah. I think you hit some several interesting points there. One of which is very geographic specific. Like when I lived in Southern California, there was no shortage of places to charge your vehicle. It was a non-issue. You could drive anywhere. You could drive to Vegas and whatever you wanted. Here, I live in Charlotte, so there's just not. I mean, there's plenty of places to charge here, but like, I mean, I have friends that live in Nebraska, and he can't even get 93 or 91 octane, let alone a charging station. I mean, I was like ragging on him, like, how are you driving around in this? You're a car guy. Why are you driving around in something on 87 octane? He's like, I can't get anything else. So he's like, either I own a diesel truck or I own something that runs on regular gas. I'm like, okay, Paul, you live in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska, so I guess that's what happened. But that's where a lot of this country is. I mean, a lot of this entire country is in areas like that. I mean, I can't get E85 to save my life around here, so I
I
get it to
can't
some
either.
extent. Yeah,
I know you can go to South Carolina and they have it,
yeah.
because like all my
I
buddies here that street race and all that stuff, they'll drive down and fill up jugs 40 minutes down the road, and then come back and stash it in their garage till they need it.
Yeah, well, that's the way to go. It's not really conducive to owning anything, though. I mean, like to driving anything. Like my Mustang, just I run Boostain 8085, and it just sits in the garage because you know I'll burn up the rest of my tank of gas just getting to the station to fill it up. So there's no point in that.
Well, like my Maverick I have, it's a cheap, uses the cheap gas. Well, now that it's tuned and all this stuff, I have to run 93 in it. So it's like I bought something that was going to be cheap, and now I'm running the expensive stuff in it. So, but the bad
Yeah,
part is the wife's diesel Tahoe gets the same mile per gallon as the Maverick does, which is crazy to me. Yeah, those 3 liter diesels get, I mean, I know we drove to Vegas last year. I was getting 26, 27 miles a gallon in a lifted full size SUV. You're running 85, 90 the whole way.
that's crazy. That is crazy.
So where you've been in both sides of the media world, automotive media world, from print to all digital, where do you see the future of automotive media going? I know other sports or fashion or whatever may be different, but in our world, where do you see automotive media going?
That's a great question. I feel like I'm like terribly too old to answer that question. Uh, I know where it's going for people my age, but I mean the question is where is it? Where is it really going? For the generations younger and younger. I mean, I I see a lot of interest waning for automotive stuff. So, and that's on us, right? Like we've got to get the younger generation into it.
Well, a
We've
lot
got
of
to
kids don't even
incorporate
want to
them.
drive. A
Yeah,
lot of kids are waiting until they're 18 or 20 to even get the driver's license.
yeah. So I mean I think that's on us to and your kid's older. I still have this opportunity to indoctrinate my automotive thoughts into my kids still at this point. But trying to bring them into the hobby, I think, is really the best shot of keeping this going. Otherwise, yeah, it doesn't have a good outlook unless the interest continues in it.
I still like when my daughter says some guy will be trying to talk to her, or whatever. She's like, "Oh, what do you drive?" And a lot of times she'll do that. Like, really? And he's like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, my dad's got cooler cars than that. You're gonna have to step it up." It's like, well, I guess
Well,
I raised her right if that's the way she's viewing that. So,
yeah, you've set a high bar.
but she grew up in it. She attended multiple shows with me, over the years, and I've had her face in a few different magazines and like show stuff, or the like graffiti section of stuff, so she's grown up around it to know to respect it. But she's got friends that destroy their cars. They don't care, but hers is, she tries to keep it clean. She gets upset if there's a door ding or a scratch. So
Yeah,
if you're going to raise your kids to be around it as well, they'll probably come out the same way.
yeah, that's my hope. That's my hope.
Do you think the social media world is going to take over like the website world in our industry? It seems that's where it's going, is the social media world is the here and now, immediate, you know, up, keeping up with stuff versus websites. So do you see a big shift towards social media, or do you see it going more towards the website world?
Um, yeah, the thing is, I think the platform and the medium, uh, you know, that's already shifted. I mean, that's the same thing that, we've already shifted our model, to meet that. People really want to be met where they are. They don't want to search out things anymore. It's really the older generations that, okay, every Monday morning, every morning at 6 a.m., I'm going to open the paper and read. That's really an older generation thing.
Paper
Um,
still exists anymore?
yeah, exactly. So like that habitual action, I think, is gone. So like people, I think a lot of people our age, it's all about like grabbing our attention. We'll read something longer, but you have to grab our attention and pull us in first. And then the younger generation, I don't even think they're on the same platforms. Like, you take something like Instagram where you can't even share links. You take something like, well, say Snapchat, let's say, YouTube, whatever. Those are not like link driven things. These are all very visual platforms and people operate natively in them. And TikTok is the same thing. People operate natively in those platforms. So, uh, you know, as a media company, we're always looking at how can we repackage our content and put it in a different medium for someone else that only consumes content in that medium. That's really our job as a media company. And yeah, the trends that we've seen, that's what people want. That's what they're doing. They're not necessarily the same people that you're serving content on TikTok with than on your website.
Now, do you think there'll ever be a shift back towards print media like it was in the day, or do you think that that's pretty much a thing of the past? I know we still have print magazines, but do you think that print is, like you said, dead?
Yeah, I think the ship has sailed there. I mean, I think and I don't blame anyone. I still read print magazines. I still have, I mean, you can see my collection
Me
behind
too.
me. We still get some in our house, but I think that is a generational thing, and I think that's going to ride out with the generation. I don't even know if the problem, part of the issue is that I think a lot of the modalities that it relies on are going away too. It's like it's not just, it's like all the infrastructure that goes along with producing this print magazines. At some point, those are going to go away too.
Now, where do you see the actual car world going? I know we touched on the EV thing there, but I know you dabble in a lot of the horsepower stuff. Do you see horsepower numbers going crazy? Even more than they have in the last decade. Like, where do you see our world going?
I mean, for the time being, things are going to continue progressing. I mean, unless there's some other major shift or anything that happens. Power numbers have just been getting crazier and crazier. Um, and even some of the things that we're seeing with like the newer vehicles and these locked ECUs and all that stuff is being figured out. I mean, and even in some cases they're locked, but maybe if you're a certain person and you can find your open door to go to the OEM and work with them on whatever your package is. And you know there are ways around the whole locked ECU thing. That's not even a hindrance, which is a crazy thought in itself. So this has only continued to progress. I mean, you could buy 1,000 horsepower vehicle from one of the big three right now. 1,000 horsepower emissions, gases emissions, like from the factory 1,000. That is just an insane thought in itself. So this is going to continue to progress, unless something else major comes along. I don't, it's impossible to predict the future, right? And we saw at the last administration, we saw this EV thing really come in, and the mandates really being very strict, and it didn't look very good for a lot of people, right? A lot of the OEMs, it didn't look good for our hobby. The attitude in the air is quite a bit different now. So yeah, I mean, unless something comes along, I see it just continue to progress.
Were you talking about like the 1,000 horsepower OEM vehicles? Like what's the crate engine that GM's, I guess, getting ready to launch or just launched or whatever, that's like 1,000 or 1,100 horsepower or something?
Yeah, well, I mean, the new ZR1 is where it's at. I mean, that thing is ridiculous. But yeah, GM. I mean, the Elephant's that package has been out for a while. You could, I mean, when you can buy 1,000 horsepower from an OEM, that to me is crazy.
Well, I know I do a lot of photos for a local client for Mecum auction stuff, and I'll get in something that, when I was a kid, a Cyclone or something. Oh, this is the fastest truck out there. You get in an old Camaro and it's like, oh, this is so fast. You put it to the floor and you're like, this is all it has. Like this is embarrassing now.
It is. It is. But you know what? There's still something to be said. I was talking to Nick at LSX Magazine about this when we were at LS Fest, Texas. We were in his truck, and he's got a GMT 800, but it's a stick shift. It's a regular cab short bed, but it's a stick shift with it was a V6 truck that he LS swapped. Anyways, there's just, for lack of a better term, there's a sketchiness to older vehicles that still makes them fun.
They feel like they're going faster than the new ones do.
Well, they do. They do. It's like if you've been in something that's like highly tuned, really nice OEM vehicle, it's like a walk in the park. You could be going at 140 miles per hour and it feels like 40. But in something like Nick's truck, it's like you're throwing this huge gear lever and you're just cranking. It was like I was grabbing the handle, like, oh man, I'm like, I'm like, Nick, just don't kill us, man.
It's like the guy that's building my Blazer for me. He's like, I want you to know. He's like, this is going to be different than anything you've ever owned. He's like, you're used to these bougie new. He's like, your high horsepower Audi wagon you had. He's like, this Blazer is going to feel completely different. You're going to have wind noise you've never had before. He's like, I'm just warning you, this is not going to be what you're used to. But I think that's the whole appeal of it, is something that's going to be, we're putting a, Gen 5 LT1 in it. So, I think to have that kind of power and something that wasn't meant for that kind of power will be fun. I wanted the LT4, but I tried not to have to spend LT4 money to do the supercharger. So
yeah, you're just as well. That's what I have in my GTO. It's a giant heat sink. You'll have a lot more fun with the LT1.
So tell people where they find your brands and the company. How do they find you online?
Sure. You can find our corporate website is powerautomedia.com. You could get the full list of our websites there. You can also go to any of them natively just by searching Dragzine, Ford Muscle, Street Muscle, Chevy Hardcore Off-Road Extreme. Diesel Army Engine Labs.
Gotcha. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on. I try to dabble in some of the editors and stuff I've worked with over the years, and you've given me opportunities for several years now at different platforms. So I definitely appreciate that as well, and glad we finally got to link up and have you on.
Yeah, well, they were well-earned opportunities, Brandon. It's been great working with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on your podcast.
No problem. Thanks again, man.
Thanks.